Hi everyone, I'm Rick Zanotti, and this is Tech Down Over Midweek Edition. No, we don't have a midweek edition, but we do right now. I'm joined by Harold Muliadi. We are here really talking about different cameras as camcorders for streaming shows like we're doing right now. Let's start. And we are back. How you doing, Harold?
Good.
You know, we've been talking a lot about different cameras and streaming and what camera is good for what. And, you know, most cameras are good for everything. Some cameras are very specific. But right now, for example, I am on the, if I'm on my single shot, I'm on the Canon XF405 camcorder. It's a high-end camcorder from Canon. About a $3,200, $3,300 camcorder. It's got a very good lens. It does a good job. If you look at this image here, this is done with the 405. Now, let's go to the Panasonic GH5. So now I am on the Panasonic GH5. Now, in this case, again, the Panasonic is the venerable Panasonic. It's a great video camera. It's also a good camera on the whole. The Panasonic right now is not in autofocus mode. We decided, because I'm not really moving much, I'm always pretty much in one spot when we do a show, that the Panasonic could stay in plain old manual focus. And what that does is it prevents any possibility of the camera going, I'm focused, I'm focused. What's that? Wait, I'm focused. I'm back. I'm focused. I'm focused. What's that? Oh, I'm back. Focused. You know, they tend to do that. It's not as bad as it used to be. Thank you, Panasonic. You have cleaned a lot of that hunting up. But it still does it every so often. When you least expected, you're elected. You're not in focus today. Smile, you're on Panasonic Camera. That was the old Candid Camera jingle, changed a bit. For those who don't know. Or who are too young. Anyway. So, what do you think, Harold? Which one do you think looks better as a camcorder?
Well, I still really like the XF405's.
So the XF is this one. Yep.
Yeah, let me switch to it. I really like the XF405's picture. Right now, we are on its wide dynamic range mode, which, by the way, it's we always hear people calling it YDR because it's wide DR,
right,
and
it's wide DR.
It took us quite a while to actually find out what it was called when we're trying to find it in the camera, because it sounds like the letters YDR. So, anyways, that's what it is.
And there's a YUV.
It's wide dynamic range, but anyways, we find that it puts out a really good picture. It does wonders for editing. We've done professional shoots, and it's given us a lot to work with editing wise.
Well, I'll tell you, we edited, it was almost 16 hours it was close to 16 hours of video, a lot of video. And we filmed with two, the XF405 and the XF400. The only difference between the two, is the 405 has an SDI terminal or connector on it. It filmed really well. We were in a large classroom. The instructor was black, not too dark, but dark enough. And a lot of cameras sometimes have problem with black people because if they're very dark, it doesn't catch the features, no matter how well lit they are sometimes. In a classroom setting, you may not be that well lit. Lit well, but not lit specifically on you. We couldn't get too close because we had to be out of the way of the class that was being given, and she moved around the class quite a bit. We had two cameras on her. One frontal, pretty much as she was moving around. The other one, a side view. So we could get different angles as she was talking about different things or as people were asking questions. We were really a little concerned that this camera, the 405, would not be able to handle that. And I even asked her to dress in certain colors, not really bright colors. We wanted nothing to take away from her, from catching her skin in its beauty. Seriously. We wanted to make her look as good as she could. And what we found is the camera really was great. Harold, you did all the video editing on this.
Yeah, this thing does a great job, especially with that wide dynamic range mode, at picking up a lot of different value ranges within the same shot. So it's
you can raise shadows pretty well. I think it's got 13 stops of dynamic range.
I don't remember exactly.
I believe it was 13, maybe 14, but it had really good dynamic range. Her features came out beautifully. You could see every one of her features. I was thrilled. I think she was happy too. She looked great. And you know, when I've taught video, that's an example I use all the time. If I have somebody in the room who's very dark and somebody who's very light, one of my tests is, okay, you got one camera and one light. Light them both. That's a tough one. How do you light two people that are totally dissimilar in skin tones? If you overlight for the black person, you are now burning out the white person or the light person. If you overlight the light person, then you will probably, or you underlight because you don't want to burn them out, then you can't see the features on the black person. That's a tough one. And no, there's no racism in this. We're talking tech. Get that. There's too much cuckoo in people's brains today. Anyway.
And while it's becoming somewhat less of a problem. I mean, that is something that you'll always have to think of when you're filming. I guess in certain ways it's becoming somewhat less of a problem because of cameras having bigger dynamic ranges, especially digital cameras, because film cameras always had pretty good dynamic range, but depending on the film.
Yeah, and definitely when you do have disparate skin tones, you want to make sure that the people with the darkest skin tones, you can see their facial features. That's important. The people with the lighter skin tones, you don't want to burn out their features because they'll just look like a splotch of blur. So, we had good lighting on them in terms of the room was well lit, but we had no direct lighting to make them look better. And this camera performed way beyond our expectations. In fact, I did some shooting with the G9, the Panasonic G9, in the same room, just as a little bit of background footage. And it did not, I guess I didn't have the right lens. I didn't have the bigger zoom, the 70-200 or the 140 Olympus to 150, I think it is. I didn't have that one, or the 140. I think it's 50 to 140. I didn't have that one with me. I probably should have bought it. She was just far enough from where I was sitting that I got her on up to about a 120 range. So it wasn't bad, but it wasn't great. And on that one, the dynamic range didn't seem as high as the Canon.
Nope, you were basically either catching her features or getting the room lit, right?
It was interesting, right? I was surprised it didn't catch more. It wasn't a bad video, but it wasn't as good as what we were getting with the Canon XF405. And no, we're not pushing Canon. We're not pushing Panasonic. So in case you're going, Panasonic lovers, Canon lovers. No, we're being agnostic. This is tech. This is strictly how we looked at things and what was coming out on the cameras. So we were very surprised that the XF405 performed as well as it did. Because there's a lot of hype every time you see, Canon videos or anybody else's promos. How much is real? How much isn't? And then when you actually start using them, you realize this is pretty good. The Panasonic GH5 as a camcorder isn't bad. Let's go back to that shot. Here we are. So we could be in autofocus mode. Actually, Harold, you want to try the experiment?
Yeah, let's.
You want to? Okay, we're going to have Harold swap this back into. You've seen what it looks like in manual focus. Everything's in focus. So let's go to face detection mode and see what it does in focus. So he's now switching it. And you will have to hit the autofocus key one time probably.
And all right, we are now in face detection.
Face detection on the GH5. So let's switch off the shot. Let's go somewhere else. So we're back on the 405 shot here. Okay, so here we are. So meanwhile, the camera's off doing its thing. So let's go back to the GH5 now. As I move around a little bit, thought somebody was behind me, but they're not. Did I fool the camera?
And this was the thing that, prior to all the firmware updates especially, was killing, GH5 videos left and right, where someone sitting still would come out of focus and back in.
It would hunt. It would hunt trying to make sure that I got distracted. You? No, wait. Oh, there you are. Oh, no, wait. No, you're over there. It was bugs in programming. The algorithm's probably tough in def by defocus, though. Panasonic will swear by it. And in photos, it's great. It's super fast, though. In tracking mode in photos, 50 to 70% hit ratio, which is not that great. It's not 100%. If I do it with a Canon on a Canon camera, I usually get 80 to 90%, maybe more. We did some shots the other day at 1/1000th of a second. Every shot was in focus. And that was on the Panasonic. So it did well. But you could easily have every shot out of focus sometimes. It just depends. So right now, if I move around, I turn around, and I come back, am I still in focus?
You are.
I am. So they've done a great job improving the autofocus of the Panasonic GH5. At the end of October 2018, there will be a new firmware update further improving the focus. And I think what they'll do is they'll probably make the focus the same as the maybe GH5S, which is probably the best of the three, the GH5, the 5S, and the 9. I think it's the best of the autofocus right now. So maybe they're putting them on a par again. That would be absolutely great. But which do you like better as a camcorder, Harold?
Well, I think as a camcorder...
I'm on GH5 now.
And this is the XF405. As a camcorder, I think that the XF405 is a little more consistent and just a little better overall. But that doesn't mean that the GH5 isn't also good. And the thing with the GH5 is it also serves well as a photo camera, and it takes good pictures.
Right.
It's good at taking pictures of hardware and stuff like that, where there's things where there's a lot of sharp lines.
It looks great.
It just focuses on those real fast, quick, and accurately.
Yeah, the lines are perfect. Actually, if you go back to, you're on the GH5 right now.
Yes.
On the GH5 right now, just in case you're wondering, we're on the 24-105 Sigma lens at f2.8, and I think we're at 60 frames per second because we're shooting in 30p. And it does a pretty good job. Again, now we are in autofocus just to see what that did. And it seems to be working okay. It's just in normal sitting down, staring at a camera, not really moving around much. And believe me, before they came out with the second version of the firmware, 50-50, it would stay on you for an extended period of time. It would think, and if there was movement behind you or people, you might be dead at that point. It won't find you. Or it'll find you, but it loses you very quickly. Not anymore.
Although, even then, the thing was, when it would tend to lose you was when someone was just kind of sitting still like Rick is.
Yeah.
And in that case, you would usually just do what we were doing at the beginning of this video, which is setting it to manual focus and then just focusing on the person. Yep. As long as they're not going to move around that much anyway, might as well just
you have a certain
focus.
amount of leeway. So it's really come a long way from what it was originally. And the GH4 had the same issues. So depth from defocus is nice, but it's problematic in video format. So maybe the wizards at Panasonic have come up with some better algorithms to make this work better. And if they did, great. We go Panasonic. We love you. And we do. We've had really good in luck with all these. They've all been good cameras. We had the GH4. We have two GH5s right now. We have one G9. We've had other Panasonic cameras, and they've all had the same issue, every one. But now they are getting better. And I think we'll see what happens with their new full frame, the S1 and S1R, I think. Let's see how they do with that, or S2. I forgot what it was. Because that also is not using phase detection. No hybrid focus. So we'll see. But in the meantime, as we go back to the 405, this camera has been great. It's been very good for a lot of our video shoots. It actually has some bokeh at the end of its range. So when you're at the 400 level, I think it gets up to like 384. I forgot the number on the zoom. It still gives you a depth of field. it's a really good lens. We're happy with them. They've worked pretty well. If we could get Panasonics or others to work as well, we'd probably be using them more. But we like to both safe when we do corporate shoots to make sure we get real good stuff. Now, we do sometimes a hybrid corporate shoot where we'll mix them, but for the most part, we're trying to keep to a solid solution. And
also on the GH5, recently our co-host Jeff Blanchard finally bought the GH5 that Rick has been telling him to buy for. As if you've been watching our show, you know how long that GH5 has been in the coming. So he shot a video that he put up on this channel. We'll link it below. He took some nice video of Melbourne, and he took some photos as well that he shows in a slideshow.
They really look good. He was using his GH5, his Ronin, I think S, is that the one he's using?
Yeah.
And some other stuff. It all came out really well. You know, the GH5 is a great camera. Aside from those focus issues, if it weren't for the focus issues, it would be the best camera in many ways. The ergonomics, the way it takes, the speed. It's really good. Yes, it's not a high pixel count camera, so you're not going to get as much detail as you may on a full frame. However, because of the magic of optics and what they do, the better lenses you have on the GH5, it's amazing the quality of picture you can get. And with the G9, for example, you have a high quality mode or high res mode, which also gives you, I think, up to 80 megapixel pictures. That's a lot of data, and they look great. So anyway, not for every application, but they look very good for when one uses them. So I guess that's it. A quick test between the Canon XF405 and the Panasonic GH5 as camcorders, and also in a very light focus test just to see how it was going. That's it. Any closing points on your end, Harold?
None, except for go watch Jeff's video.
We'll link it below. He did a great job. He must have spent a lot of time recording that. So anyway, we will see you this Friday with Jeff and with
Micro Four
Nerds. Emily, she'll be with us from the UK, England.
It's going to be a good show.
It will be. Have a good one, everyone. Bye-bye.
Bye.